Well, guys, with Halloween coming up in a couple weeks, I think it's a good time as ever to talk about my favorite horror movies. Though honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of Halloween. I know, stop your booing. It's just I think it's a little overhyped, and I think everybody just gets overexcited about it for no reason. Unless you're like a kid, I feel like there's really no good reason to get so excited about Halloween. But who am I to judge, you know? If it's fun for you, it's fun. Just not my thing. I'm also not the biggest fan of horror movies, which is why there's only seven on this list, because I feel like a lot of horror movies are very formulaic. It's like the same thing every time. Um, and honestly, like with most horror movies, you've seen one, you've seen them all. However, there are a few for me that stand out as just either being very creative or using a simple plot in a very creative way, I guess. Which brings us to my first one. These are in no particular order. They're just kind of what I thought of on the top of my head, by the way. So the first one is Alien, directed by Ridley Scott. This movie is a masterpiece. I'm also a big fan of James Cameron's Aliens, but I feel like that's more of an thriller movie, like an action movie, than a horror movie. It's still equally as good though, so I recommend checking that out as well. But this is more straight horror. You know, I think the movie does a great job at developing the characters in such little time we have with them. So when they do get killed off, we actually care. Sigourney Weaver as Ripley is one of the best heroes in existence. She risks her life just to save a cat. I mean, who couldn't? What's not to admire there? The alien is very it's very creepy because you never know where it is. It's very good at hiding. It's a very brutal movie. Anybody who knows the famous John Holt scene knows what I'm talking about. This review is, this video is going to be pretty light on spoilers, but if you know, you know. Next up is Psycho, of course, directed by Alfred Hitchcock. So this movie is so well put together, honestly. Um, you're like shifting from protagonist to protagonist, except they keep dying. And the villain is great. His weird relationship with his mother kind of brings him some Freudian stuff. It's shot in a very modern style, considering it was made over 60 years ago. Um, Honestly, a timeless classic. Anthony Perkins' performance as Norman Bates is honestly down in history as one of the greatest of all time. And everybody knows about like the huge twist, the shower scene, but not a lot of people know about like the final twist, you know. So for those of you who haven't seen it, I highly recommend. Next up, we got Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, which is based off of Stephen King's book. I haven't read his book, though I do like Stephen King. Watch out for a video on his new book in a couple weeks, guys. But Stanley Kubrick's The Shining is such a tense movie. Um, I'm not really scared by horror movies, by the way. I'm just looking at these in terms of like plot. Uh, but yeah, Jack Nicholson gives such a deranged performance. And the atmosphere of like the loneliness of this hotel, the fact that the hotel is so big, but there's only three people there, minus a bunch of ghosts, which may not even be real. It's genius. The directing, the surreal imagery that kind of comes, like when it's like a normal scene, then it would suddenly flash to like this whole bloody bath scene. It's great, and I think it's one of those few movies which you enjoy more and more on each rewatch. At least it is for me. So highly check it out, even though Kubrick was a little bit mean to Shelley Duvall, which completely uncalled for. But you got to separate the art from the artist, you know. Moving on to something I saw relatively recently was The Thing, which they brought back into theaters. I did a whole video on that, so check that out if you want. Um, in a few words, I think it's just a very great example of a base under siege movie, where like people can't escape. They're stuck in this base, and a monster comes. But what makes this one really cool is the fact that it takes the alien takes the form of people's bodies, so you don't know who to trust. And as someone with trust issues, that makes it a very intense scenario, one which I would not want to be in. And all, John Carpenter's directing in this is fantastic. The acting by Kurt Russell, I think, is very good because, yeah, he's a badass, but he's also under a lot of duress, as most of us would be. This next one, I don't really know if it counts as a horror movie or not, but this is Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. I don't know if it's like a thriller or a horror movie, but oh my god, I did not know what I was signing up for when I saw this movie. I don't really want to give much away. I also made a video on this a few months ago if you want to check that out, but oh my god. Betty Davis was like the original Joker. She played the original Joker. Her like her quick descent into madness based on this feud between these two sisters is very entertaining to watch. It's very stressful. She plays a really good psychopath, and the other actress, Joan Crawford, is very good too. Like you feel bad for her, but at the same time, she's not as innocent as you may think. And Betty Davis, while playing a crazy person, you feel a little bit of empathy for her, which makes it all the more of a great performance to me. Very unpredictable. I did not know where this was going. I'm just trying to stay as spoiler free as possible, so if you want to know what I'm talking about, watch the movie, then watch my video on it. These last two are David Lynch movies. You know, I had to throw my man in here. Eraserhead, I think it counts as a horror movie. Made in the 70s on a very, very, very low budget, shot over 5 years. This movie explores the fears of being a parent and just like urban decay. I don't know how to describe it. Just living in like a modern times and feeling like nothing means anything. The black and white imagery, the very surreal, disturbing stuff. Jack Nance is very. It's not stoic. It just looks hopelessness in his eyes. Just a brilliant movie. There's really not much to spoil in this one because it's very experimental. With a lot of David Lynch movies, the plot doesn't mm, the plot doesn't make a lot of sense on a logistical level. It makes sense on an emotional level, which is why I'm such a big fan of his. So if you want to watch that movie, I highly recommend it. And this last movie, which is probably one of the few movies that have ever terrified me. Well, not terrified me, but very haunted me. This is Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, again directed by David Lynch. So this movie has your creepy devils and demons and giants and creamed corn monsters, but below that is a very real story of domestic abuse and rape, especially by a family member. I have not experienced any of that. Neither has a lot of people. I don't think anybody I know, but you could tell like the the drama is there. You know, I think a very it's very real because unlike a lot of movies, you know, the monster's an alien, the monster's a body stealer. This one it happens all the time, you know, which makes it very realistic despite its all the crazy shit that also happens in that movie. I feel like a lot of people were turned off by this movie when they first saw it, which is why it hasn't got the greatest reviews, um, because it's a lot darker than Twin Peaks. Now, this is very, it has a really good reason to be. Twin Peaks is shown, but at least the original series was shown through Agent Cooper's point of view, a very wide-eyed, optimistic detective, adult, while Fire Walk with Me is a very lonely, scaled, um, violence-induced, whatever, what's the word? I don't know. It's the story told from a victim, so of course it's gonna be a lot darker. But I just love it. I think it's a cinematic masterpiece. Honestly, one of my favorite movies of all time. Um, but not one to watch if you're a bit queasy about some of those things. So those are my top seven horror movies. Um, like I said, not a big fan of horror movies, besides these, I guess, or Halloween, because I think it's overrated. But let me know down in the comments below what your favorite horror movies are. Which ones do you think I would like, or which ones do you want me to check out? Thank you everybody for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.